On this week's episode, we do a little walkthrough start to finish from shooting and editing in terms of workflow. We also delve into the fascinating, I promise you it is fascinating, world of data storage. Tom has a lot to say on the matter, so sit down, grab a notepad and enjoy. How are you doing today, Tom? You all good?
Mate, I'm a bit tired, but I have had the world's strongest coffee, an 8-shot Nespresso. So I'm feeling...
That's basically the equivalent of an adrenaline shot to the heart.
I'm feeling pretty good, actually, turns out. I'm doing all right. So
I'm a bit worried you're going to have a crash halfway through the podcast.
Well, if I start crying, just we'll have to pause it and come back to it. How's everything with you?
Yes, not bad. I have finally put my trousers back on. I was actually not wearing any trousers in our pre-record.
Well, just as well our cameras are wasting up because I did not notice. So,
yeah, I basically got absolutely pissed on the way into the studio today, cycling in. So,
by someone
I've
or
swanning? No, by the rain.
Oh, the
swanning around the studio in a sarong.
Oh, nice. Just the casual studio sarong. We all have them.
Yeah, well, it's there for this very reason because it does happen quite a lot when I cycle in and get absolutely pissed upon and then have to put my trousers on the radiator.
And the people who share your studio with,
Problem is I forget that I'm in it, and then the doorbell will go to the studio or something, and I'll kind of walk out there and be like, what are you looking at?
The delivery driver's going, okay.
Strange man.
So you're not pissed on anymore? You're all good?
No, I'm wearing toasty warm trousers that are freshly off the radiator.
Excellent. I once did that, and the metalwork, so the buttons and the zip got so hot on the radiator that I accidentally burnt my hands because it turns out I put them on a gas radiator.
You burned something else there.
Yeah, it was. Well, yeah, can you imagine? Well, my pork and beans now roasted.
Permanently scored. Yeah, branded with Levi's.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
Backwards.
Anyway. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Today we are going to be doing a little chat about productivity and workflows and stuff like that. We've had a lot of messages basically wanting us to talk about the business side of things. So we're going to, I think, use these G&T episodes to talk about things like that. Is that right?
Yeah, kind of our approaches really because we've both got quite different approaches to the way that we work and our workflow. And so they're going to be slightly rambling, but hopefully not too rambling chats where we discuss various elements. And this week we wanted to talk about not only workflow, but also kind of systems that we have in place that help with productivity. Things like what kind of hard drive systems we use and how we import data and what have you, which sounds very dry, but I promise you it won't be.
We will make it entertaining. I promise. I'll do my best anyway.
Yeah, that's an exposed negative guarantee. Worthless. Okay, so let's get into it. I mean, let's talk through like a typical shoot. You're coming in. You've done the shoot. You've called a wrap, and you're back in your office, and what's your process for importing and importing, editing and exporting? Well, that's a new term. We could use edporting as a mix of editing.
All right, yeah, let's coin that. Right, guys, today on the Exposed Negative, you're going to learn all about edporting.
TM, yeah.
Edporting sounds like a guy I went to school with. Do you know what edporting's up to now? God, he's in finance.
Probably.
Look, I think you've jumped the gun a bit. So I would actually, my workflow starts way back. So my workflow actually starts shooting. Obviously everyone's does, but like my data wrangling, if you will, starts way back as I start shooting, right? So So I shoot with. I'm just going to use all the names so people can actually search for all this stuff in case you don't. Rather than me just kind of go, I use something like this. I'm just going to tell you exactly what I use because it's going to be way easier for people to find the stuff. And then we'll put links to almost everything. There's going to be quite a lot of stuff, but we'll put some links in the show notes. So I'm now a Sony user after having a bit of a hiccup and deciding to sell all my Leica stuff. But we'll get to that at some other point. My workflow is Sony camera, tethered via a Tether Tools cable. I actually use a pigtail cable, which is a short 30 centimeter USB-C right-angled cable, which then runs into one of the
Is
four.
that made by? Is that made by Tether Tools?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, all the cables I use are Tether Tools.
Okay.
So the either that or StarTech. I use short USB-C Thunderbolt cables for my data wrangling, the stuff that's not camera to laptop, but all the camera to laptop stuff, that's all Tether Tools. So I have that, and I run it through a little anchor thing that I've made, and then because I use the pigtail, what happens then is just off the camera there is a USB connection. So when I stand on the cable, we all do it. It happens all the time, or when the client stands on it, or whether it gets caught or something, it's surprisingly common. And I pull the camera away. There is no jerk. There is no, where's it gone?
Okay, so it almost acts like a jerk stopper.
Yeah, it just disconnects. So it basically takes any tension that would build up on the cable. It just completely gets rid of it, because it basically just breaks apart, and then there's no strain on the camera, there's no strain on the laptop, there's no strain on the cable. It just effectively falls apart, and because the Tether Tool cables have got quite a good connection, it holds until there's pressure on it. So it doesn't really come disconnected or anything like that. I have tried to use their kind of screw on coupler things, but I don't. I just find that it's less hassle just to have them connected.
I've tended to run mine through a base plate that sits on the camera that acts as a jerk stopper.
So which one do you use? Do you use the Tether Tools one?
I don't, because it was quite expensive when I looked at it, and I found a kind of third-party one which basically did exactly the same thing. It just needed the channels padding out a little bit, which I did with some tape.
Yeah, this is the thing. There's
hacked another plate basically.
I think, yeah, but is that the one with the thumbs?
It's an Arca Swiss compatible plate, so I can use it.
Perfect. Yeah, it's there's always ways around it. Mine is, my tether lock is not quite as simple as yours. I wish it was, but because I use an L bracket on my cameras, I have a Arca Swiss mount on the left hand side of the camera, right? So I found that Arca, you can buy these. I don't know quite what they're for, but they're really thin and small Arca Swiss stop bars or something. So I found them on AliExpress for $8 each, and I ordered a couple, and then I had to take a drill. And a sander to them to make them fit. But they have just a 1/4 inch on the. They have 2 1/4 inches, so I just run a zip tie through them, and it just basically locks the cable into it.
Well, it'd be good actually. Maybe we'll do on our Instagram. We could perhaps do some little behind the scenes shots of some of this kit at some point. We'll put them up either on the main feed, or we might collate them into our stories. Because I realised I haven't walked you through my tether station yet, which you've definitely got a history of making fabulous homemade tether stations.
Have I?
Yeah, anybody wants to see that, you could. Is it still up on Petapixel? I can't remember how many years. I mean, I know it's your old.
That's an old,
very old.
Yeah, that must have been 2014, 15. Like old.
But it definitely set off a lot of people to kind of be like inspired to build their own.
Yeah, I hope so.
And I know that you use Trek Pack interiors in yours, don't you? I
did. So my thing now is mobility. So I, used to travel a lot. We'll do at some point in the future again. So all of my stuff I need to be able to carry along a beach in the middle of Indonesia, or carry up a mountain somewhere. I want all of my stuff to be as lightweight as possible. So I now my digi stuff is in a backpack, but not a camera backpack. I found I quite like finding stuff from other companies that can be repurposed and works quite well to kind of fit in my workflow. And there's a company called 511 Tactical, who I found when I was I think I was in Texas on a job for Shell.
They're quite a military surplus kind of
Yeah,
company, aren't
they
they?
are. They just make stuff for people who play professional airsoft and who are professional law enforcement slash military.
Yeah.
And but you know, their stuff's pretty nice. It's nicely built and it's covered in molly straps.
Yeah.
So as far as kind of expanding it or buying pouches for certain things, it's kind of ideal. But
Mm.
I found a bag that has two main compartments, one of which fits the digiplate. I use the innovative digiplate alongside all my tether tools stuff, and it basically I have a router mounted to it. I have a card reader. I have a little memory card slot thing that I bought small rig, do a power bank clip which auto expands when you put some pressure on it, and I use Sugru to pad it out so it fits my little G Technology SSD.
Mm.
For those of you who don't know what Sugru is, it's awesome. It
It's
is,
amazing.
yeah. So it's. Would you want to tell people what it is?
Well, I've used it to fix cameras. I've used it to fix all sorts of things. It's basically like a form of silly putty, which once you've exposed it to the air, it comes in sealed packets. It sets hard after about 20 minutes. It's waterproof, and it basically you can mold it into any shape you
Mhm.
want. It comes in different colors. Um, for a long time, I had a grip on my Wacom stylus pen that I'd made from Sugru
Yep.
because they make it to any shape you want. Um, I fixed an old Mamiya 7 that I had with Sugru because it had a big hole in the bottom, and I just put the Sugru in,
And it
filled the crack, and it
worked.
sealed, and it's watertight. Yeah,
Yeah, this is it, right? So
um,
it's curable
great
rubber.
stuff.
So you say it goes hard after 20 minutes, but then it's fully cured after 24 hours, and then it is rock solid. It is like it was built onto the camera. So
Mm,
I use it all the time. It's
mm,
there's most of my kit has some sort of Sugru on it because it makes it, you know, you can put it in the hand grip to really fit your fingers
mm.
on the camera grip and stuff like that. And it, you know, it decimates the secondhand value of your equipment. But let's face it, professional use will do that as well. So it's
Yeah,
you know, I don't really care that much about it. But yeah, it's I think the saying goes that there's three things now. It used to be gaff tape and zip ties could fix anything, but now for me it's gaff tape, zip ties, and Sugru.
and not just zip ties. I'm a big fan of Velcro zip ties.
Velcro
I have
zip
some of those
ties.
in my kit, and they're
Ooh,
amazing because they're reusable.
yeah.
So for cable ties, for all sorts of for hanging backdrops with through kind of eyelets on tarpaulins or
Mhm.
backgrounds that you might have, I have like a whole raft of them. There's a video I did actually on my YouTube, which is it like walks you through my kit bag, and
It's a very good video,
you'll
to be
see
fair.
in there how much I hark on about Velcro zip ties.
You do like them a lot. Do you know what I like? I Velcro zip ties for me are fine, but I love I've what I found to be a slightly more useful thing. For me, I was never quite as enterprising with you as with Velcro zip ties. For me, I found bongo ties to be kind of
Go
indispensable.
ties.
Have you use those?
No.
So bongo ties are a little piece of bamboo with natural rubber in a loop, and they, you know,
Oh,
you
okay.
can do up cables.
Yeah.
You can, you know, fashion them to suspend tarps. You can
Hmm.
hang stuff off them. You know, they're super useful. And I don't know who does them in the UK. I always pick mine up whenever I'm in New York. I go to B&H because they have all the colors, and I have the. I think it's onyx. I think my bongo ties are all the onyx ones, and they look rad because they're black bamboo with black rubber. And they look sick. They're very on brand. But yeah, for me, I use those all the time, and I use them on my digi stuff as well because it's
So it's an interesting to go back to the tethering thing. So my tether setup, I probably when I'm traveling for work, I will very rarely be tethering unless it's a commercial job
Mhm.
because of the nature and the way I shoot. But my tether kit that I met that is basically made has been designed around my particular computer and what have you. I'll try. Maybe we can put some pictures up of that on Insta because I ended up making my own Trek pack
Mhm.
again because of getting hold of Trek pack in the UK and kind of it's quite expensive for what it is. It's great stuff, but it's quite expensive, and you can actually create a very similar system quite easily with a little bit of spray mount um, and particular materials. But and put some pictures up of it, because I was able to then color code it to all of my kits in got certain kind of colored cable ties and colored tape that demarks what's mine on set. So I was able to then bring that across into my tether station as well. But what's brilliant about making the TrekPat system, as you know, is you can then build it around what you have. So I know that my Hyperjuice will sit perfectly above all of the cabling that it requires, contained underneath it. I can fit my Bose speaker in there, or I can fit my kind of little Samsung T5 solid state.
And you can make proper use of the vertical space. I think that's where it really comes into its own, because you can have the Bose speaker on its end rather than
if you've got deep enough.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, if you've got the depth. But for me, I use TrekPat in all my Peli cases. I swear by it. I just think, if you're going to have a Peli case, it's very easy to have everything loose in there and knocking about, but it's A, hard to find things, but B, also I just love everything having a space. Like I kind of go, right, I need to go and get that speaker. I know exactly where it is. And I can just...
Well, it's the nature of a shoot is you want, at the end of it, it's chaotic. Sometimes you might be packing up in a hurry. Things get moved around and lost, and if you've got a place for them to live, then you know that the next time. It also means that when you're preparing for a job, you can very quickly look at your kit and see if anything's missing, if anything needs changing, if anything needs charging, because you have those systems in place.
Well, likewise, at the end of the shoot, if there's a hole, what went in that hole? Where is it? So you don't ever leave a location without something.
Super clamp still gripped to the ceiling or something.
Exactly.
So you're tethering in. So the difference here, for example, with to just very quickly, when I'm shooting abroad, for example, depending on the job, but I used to shoot quite a lot of NGO work. Not so much at the moment because of the traveling aspect, but a lot of that work and a lot of the travel shoots I do, there's a lot of captioning that's required. So I would use, out in the field, I'd use a program called Photo Mechanic, which is very fast at ingesting, very fast at sorting and going through images, and has a great system where you can set up shortcuts. So when you're doing NGO work, quite often you need to be getting as much information about the subjects in the photos so that you are aware whether or not people have been properly released for the images to be used, but also to give the image context, because it's utterly useless to a charity unless they've got a full story behind it that they can. So you need to be having like a caption that might be 100 words long. Now, of course, if you're shooting a week somewhere, you're going to end up spending a huge amount of time captioning. And one of the great things with Photo Mechanic is you can set up shortcut script, so that if you've got a name, for example, that you're using a lot, you could just put, to go back to our Ed port that we came up. Say you had an Ed port that you need to keep referencing, you could just abbreviate that to EP. Every time you type in EP, it will then fill out his full name and age if you attach that, etc. So it makes working in the field a lot quicker. And then once back in the studio, I would a few years ago I would have then brought everything across to Lightroom, but I've since moved everything across to Capture One. So now it will be bringing everything into Capture One. Obviously those captions are baked into the metadata at that point, and the star rating that you can put on in Photo Mechanic obviously also transfers across.
Oh, that's good.
So
can you use color tags?
You can, yes.
Okay.
The only thing that I've had a few issues with Photo Mechanic is occasionally the importing has intelligent importing. If you do some kind of renaming, you can end up with some situations where it will duplicate images,
right?
Which is incredibly annoying. You don't obviously lose any images, so it's better to duplicate than to lose. But a few occasions I've had it where you end up with 3 versions of the same shot, and you go, "Why is my hard drive getting very full?" So it's not seamless. And obviously the thing with all of these computer programs is none of them do the job perfectly. They all have different, in the same way that Lightroom has its good points, but it also has a lot of bad points, and Capture has its good points and seems to be getting better and better, but also has a few bad points. But you would probably very rarely tether with Lightroom if you've got the option to tether with Capture, just because of the speed.
Sure.
So for me, Photo Mechanic is about the speed in the field, speed that it will go through with previews, and being able to edit en masse captioning.
Yeah. So for me, I don't use Photo Mechanic. I just use Capture One straight away. Go straight into it. And if I don't shoot tethered, everything goes straight into Capture anyway. So I kind of bypass that that because I don't need to do the
I
same
mean,
level of captioning and things like
so
that.
this is quite rare. This only for certain jobs that I will be doing
Sure.
using Photo Mechanic. It's very specific for those jobs, and most jobs I will do what you do and go straight into Capture.
Mm-hmm.
I do wish that Capture could develop their metadata side of things, because it's not as user friendly as it could be in terms of mass captioning or mass kind of input of data. But then maybe that's something that's not often required by.
I'm finding I'm getting used to it a bit more. There's kind of quirks around it and things like that, but I'm getting used to the copy and paste and syncing all the data and things like that. But to be honest, for my stuff, it's I shoot less images, I think. So for me, I think it's much less of an issue. I just kind of copy and paste over everything over one shoot, because that's tends to be how it is. And obviously for my commercial stuff, don't need to bother. There's just, they don't need that level of information.
No, but for long-term use, it is always really good, and I'm sure you do this anyway, but for long-term use, it's always really good to be able to have your work properly keyworded, just because, down the line, when you've got 10 years of archive, it's nice to be able to throw in a keyword and find a shoot, identify a shoot based on keywords. And again, that's something that obviously Capture does provide, but it's maybe not as fluid as it could be.
No, I don't think it is. But also, I don't think it's possible because all of my work is in sessions, so I don't think it's possible externally to search for keywords through 30,000 sessions.
No, you'd need to create a catalog, which is where Lightroom used to be quite good, because the way I used to traditionally work with Lightroom is I'd have an entire year as a catalog. And each year I'd have a new catalog. So every job in that year would be in that annual catalog, and it would just about handle, because obviously catalogs have an optimum size that they can be before they start losing performance. And that's the difference between working with Capture One and sessions, is the sense that you are working each job has its session. Well, that's the way I work.
Yeah, same.
And for me, moving across to that was quite a jump, because before it had been a lot easier to be able to go back and look over an entire year's worth of work and collate images, quickly pull out images for pitches, or for pitching documents if you need to drop in lots of different images from lots of different shoots. It's fantastic to be able to work with the catalog in that way.
No, sure, absolutely. The way I have it all set up now is the other couple of weeks ago, I actually changed my entire data back end, which I'm sure we'll talk about hard drive storage and stuff like that. But now everything is organized by years, which makes it way easier to wrangle and back up the data, because actually I'm backing up a year at a time. It's considerably less data. Before, I had it all on one drive, and I had this crazy huge NAS drive that I was dragging around, and actually it was a lot of data. But for me, with the sessions, I actually have a new session for every day of a shoot. So if it's a 5-day shoot, I have 5 sessions, and they're completely separate from one another, because obviously I think you used to, I don't know if this was the case, but I always used to struggle to get multiple sessions open at once. But now obviously I don't have that issue. I don't know if it's because my computer's now much better, but I have, I can copy and paste settings from session to session and things like that. So I don't necessarily worry about keeping one job in a small catalog or anything like that. I just find that sessions for me far faster, far snappier. But what I do have in Capture One is I do have, and there's obviously a way of doing this. I have all my process recipes synced, but I copy and paste them every month between my main working machine and my laptop and stuff. So I have. Go on.
And I was going to say I've fallen foul of that before, and now I do that. I have a G drive where it's kind of, they get copied and pasted and dumped so that I can make sure they're on my laptop.
Yeah,
Same.
Exactly. And so for me, what I do is with my process recipes, you say, for example, you get a brief in and they go, have you got a picture of X that you should probably put into that spot? I go, I do have a picture of X. So I find it in my backup. I open the session. I go, oh, there's the picture. I quickly, if it doesn't need to be big, I'll quickly whack a grade on it if it's not already been edited, and then I go into my process recipes, and I have, say for example, I have 1500 pixels to the desktop set as one of them, or I have a social media folder on my shared cloud service, so I can export to that and then be able to pop things straight up on social media. Or I basically have recipes for everything I'd need. So I have a very specific recipe for the website. So if I need to add an image to the website, I process everything out. I don't export a high-res JPEG and then bring it into Photoshop and then resize it in Photoshop. I found that it saves you a lot of time to spend the time and create these recipes in Capture, and then just,
Well, it's a good use of the time at the moment when a lot of
yeah,
people are a bit quieter with work as
100%,
well, to be kind of
100%. Because it will save you when things do get busy again. It will save you a surprising amount of time. So I have, and also it's clever because you can do, you can do watermarked proofs, or you could do proofs based on a certain, use a specified search criteria. So you find everything that you've been rated as 3 stars with an orange color tag, if you have that set up for a certain thing, and then you have it export that with the folder name as the recipe, the search recipe. So you can do it in loads of different clever ways. So I have a proofs folder, and then all my proofs come out in there. So I have a proof of every shot from the shoot, and then I have a proof of my selects, and then I have a proof of the client selects, and then I have proofs of plates, extensions, stuff like that. And then they then come into Contact Page Pro. Have you ever used that?
No, I haven't.
What do you use to create contact sheets?
Well, I actually very rarely do
Right.
create contact sheets. Sometimes I'll just use Adobe Bridge,
I think
but it's
a
not
lot of
great
people
for it.
do. I don't think people know that Contact Page Pro is made by a company called Badia Software, and I've been using it for a few years. And you can create a nice looking template. You drop your images in, boom, you can export a PDF, and then the PDF's quite large, so I use something called PDF Squeezer, and you have to spend a bit of time getting PDF Squeezer set up. But it's a Mac thing that's available in the App Store. You drag your PDF onto that and specify the criteria, and it will knock 70% off the PDF size.
Well, you got me onto JPEG Mini, which it does a similar thing for JPEGs, doesn't it? It reduces the size of JPEGs.
It's visually lossless.
Yeah, so I was able to. Sorry, a bit of a tangent, but I store all my kind of final images and all my low res that go to clients on a service called PhotoShelter, and that's how my website is run through that. But it makes delivering images to clients super easy. But I'd kind of was getting huge amounts of storage because it's effectively my cloud server in a way, and it was just being swallowed up by all of these images. And then you put me onto JPEG Mini, and I started going through dumping huge folders of JPEGs into JPEG Mini, and it would spit them out, having kind of reduced them in size by about 60 to 70% at sometimes. And suddenly I had all this freed up space. So that was a good shout.
The important thing there is it is visually lossless. Download the trial, see what you think. For me, everything, and the cool thing about JPEG Mini is it's a cool bit of software, right? Very clever. Like you cannot. It is impossible to perceive the difference in quality between the full size file and one that I've done it. I've gone in pixel deep. I cannot see a difference. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm sure if you were, zoomed into 1,000% or whatnot, you could probably see it. But like for me, it's visually lossless, and it is integrated with Capture One. So you can use it. They have when you buy it, the Pro version, it comes with a plugin that you can use in your process recipes. So I export, say for example, things go to the website. They're already optimized via JPEG Mini for my website because that's included in the process recipe. And the same my social media, things like that.
Yeah. So for people who aren't, I mean, most people, I guess, listening will be familiar with process recipes in Capture One, but effectively they're like Photoshop actions. You can kind of create a simple action for exporting your image into various formats, whether it be a TIFF, whether it be JPEG, whether it be PSD. And so in terms of what we're talking about today with productivity, they're fantastic for just creating that kind of speed with shortcuts effectively.
Yeah. And there's an unlimited, obviously you want to keep it down so you know where they are, but like you can create, I don't know, all sorts. If you have a very specific file format that a retoucher needs, you can specify all that, and you can choose how much metadata is included. You can change kind of whether they're going to be watermarked. They're very, very flexible, and for me, it's one of the best features of Capture One. You know, I spend a lot of time going through and finessing them because they do really save you a lot of time.
Well, one of the fantastic things is at the end of a job, you can spit out all of them simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not just you're saying, right, these 10 images, I want them all as low res JPEGs. I want high res JPEGs as well, because and then I need full TIFFs.
Yep.
16-bit TIFFs, whatever.
You just select,
and you can just get them going at the same time, and then it will start processing it in the background.
Exactly. You just select the multiple recipes, and boom, away you go. You know, it's a great way of doing it.
So let's jump back a little bit.
Sorry, we are jumping all over the shop.
File naming. Like, talk about when you're importing your images. What's your kind of file naming convention? Because you said you're now doing it all by year.
Well, the file naming convention hasn't changed. The storage convention's changed, but the file naming convention has been the same since year 2 of my career. I've never changed that. I have a 6-digit code. So it goes client name _ job name _ and these are all abbreviated, you know. So it goes client name _ agency name, if there's an agency involved, _ client name _ 6-digit date code. So say, for example, is the 27th of July today, so it would be 270720 _ a 4-digit number that denotes the number of the image. So
I always do mine the other way around. So I'll do year, month, day _ and I have done, again, like you, not for the file names, but for all my folders, because I store folders annually, and again, we'll back up a year at a time, offsite backup. But I've always kind of gone in with year, month, day, because of the way it will automatically then chronologically put them in the right order.
So I have that in my folder system. That's how my folders are organized. So yes, when you then search you have them listed and you have them organized by date created, then everything is in the perfect order using that system. But when it comes into the files, I have the shoot name, agency name _ date, because the date at that point is less important than who the job's for, if that makes sense.
Yes.
The two important things for me of that job are who is it for and the number of the image. And when you look at the file name truncated in column view in Mac Finder, it shows you the beginning of the file name and the end of the file name. But I already know the date because I'm in the dated folder. So that's why I do it like that.
Very clever. I like that. And then
I'd like to say I did that on purpose. That is just simply when
discovered it one day and went,
13 years ago when I created this system, I just thought it looked pretty. I genuinely thought it just looked okay. And before that, I was doing mad things. Like I was putting my full name and my mobile number in the file name. And also, what's really funny is in the early days of my career, I hadn't quite figured out how to set the clock on the camera, so it looks like all of my images for the first year of my career were taken in 1970. So yeah, glad I spent some time.
I mean, setting the clock on your camera is I mean, people who do video would be doing this anyway, but generally photographers can be a little bit more lax with it. But if you can sync, especially if you're shooting 2 cameras, and again, when I'm shooting certain jobs with 2 cameras, it's a bit more reportage. Having the cameras synced is really helpful, because if you then need to, you can then file name them based on hour and minute and second potentially.
Do you use a particular bit of software for that? Because I use what's it called? File Renamer. Very imaginative. I don't know where they came up with it. It's called a Better Finder Renamer. That's what I use to because you can specify
Better Finder Renamer.
A Better Finder Rename 10.
They really need to work on that. It's a really non-snappy
it's
name.
catchy, isn't it? At least it does say what it does say what it does.
That's what it does on the tin.
But with it, you can specify. There's loads of different criteria that you can specify. So you can sort first by creation date, then by all sorts of stuff. So if I am not tethering and I've done a shoot without tethering, I'll run it through that.
Yes.
And then that'll organize everything by the date created.
Okay. I'll have to look into that. I'm taking it you probably use then, once you've got your images in there and you're wanting to back up, you probably use ChronoSync.
I think
that seems to be industry standard.
We all should use ChronoSync. I think it's one of the best bits of software ever invented. Econ Technologies, if you're listening, pay me. No, it's just simply it seems incredibly robust as far as a data bit of software. For me, I've been using it 12 years and I've never had a single issue with it. And so what I do when I am shooting, if I'm tethering, I will shoot an image. It'll take a couple of seconds to come through to the laptop, and then I have a ChronoSync action running in the background to run every minute. So what it will then do is it will do a sync, and because it's running on SSD with something called Smart Scan, it only changes the affected files. So if you then add an image, it's automatically then going to back up to the same folder you've specified on the ChronoSync backup location, so the SSD. So and also I shoot with the Sonys. I don't know, Canon used to have this feature, Leica did in the SL, but then for some reason killed it in the SL2, which was one of my reasons for getting rid. And Sony have this feature, as do Fuji, I think I remember them having it. But you would shoot an image, it would also save it to the memory card, transfer it to the computer, and then in my system, within 30 seconds of taking an image, I'd have 3 copies of the data. So I'd have one on the camera, I'd have one on the laptop, and then via ChronoSync, I would then have one on the SSD. And it means at the end of the shot, for example, I don't need to go, guys, got to back up now. It's already done. I just disconnect the drive, put it in my pocket, and then the camera goes back in the bag, and the laptop goes with the assistant. So then there's 3 copies of the data spread across 3 different sources. So I would have to be mugged, my assistant would have to be mugged, and my kit would have to be nicked all in one go.
So we could arrange that.
You know the size of me. I'll give it a good shot, mate. I'll tell you.
I'd probably go for the assistant.
Yeah, that's it. But it's quite a good way. I'm a firm believer in the 3-2-1 rule, which we'll get to when we talk about the office side of the data things. But 3 copies of the data on 2 separate locations is a really good way of doing it.
I think we'd love to. It might be interesting actually at some point to get we've been talking about this, and we're getting a digital tech onto the podcast.
Yes,
Digitech to talk through their process. So if people are interested and they found this particular section and they want to know more, then let us know, because if it's something that you'd like to hear from someone who does this and that's kind of their pure focus, I'm sure they would have a lot more to add to this.
Yeah, we do actually have someone lined up who's agreed to come on, so we just need to find time to record it.
Yeah, but so therefore, if anyone actually has any questions they'd like put to a Digitech, kind of stuff that they'd like us to discuss,
get them in.
It would be great to send them in.
Absolutely.
Okay. So then, is there anything else on that you want to talk about?
No, and the reason, sorry, that was a 40-minute. That was a 40-minute detour from the original point. So going back to your original question 40 minutes ago, that was my point. That was where my workflow starts. And so then what happens at the end of the shoot is I disconnect my hard drive and go to the office. And that's I don't need to sit, I don't need to back up, I don't need to do anything like that. I have the session, I have the Capture One session on my SSD, which lives in my pocket. I have it on me now. It comes with me all times because I have the previous 6 months of jobs on me at any given point on an encrypted SSD drive. I use the G Technology 2 terabyte little thing. It's tiny and it slots in my pocket, and it's rapid. It's got a 5-year guarantee or 3-year guarantee. It's a crazy warranty. It's bulletproof. For full disclosure, I don't think it's actually bulletproof. It's just a term of phrase, and it's it's just a great bit of kit. SanDisk do one. They've just brought out a new one which got a gig a second read write, which looks like a really cool bit of kit as well. And the prices of these things has really come down. But for me, I always carry, and I encrypt all my drives. This is also another part. I'm not going to teach you. I'm not going to talk about how you encrypt your drives, but it's very easy to find out. It's built into the Mac OS. And say, for example, someone steals the hard drive, and you go, "Shit, someone's nicked my hard drive." They can't do anything with it. It's encrypted at a file structure level. If they plug it in, it'll just go, "Password, please," and they're not going to be able to guess it. My passwords, even I don't know my passwords. It sounds insane. I use a muscle memory technique to do my passwords. So I will write down a bizarre 12, 13, 14, 18 digit code, and then I will learn it, memorize it.
Are they not just Tom is great, Tom is great, Tom is great?
Yes, Tom is great 43. Exclamation point. But yeah, so for me, data security and safety, if I'm doing a commercial job and the hard drive goes missing and someone picks it up and it may be a sensitive thing or something like that, and then the images find their way online, I'd be in real trouble. If someone broke into the office and into your office, not your office, but the listener's office, and stole your hard drive, do you want them being able to access everything on the drive just by plugging it into a computer? No, probably not. You want it to be private. There's probably nothing dodgy on it, but just from protecting your client's images, protecting your archive, you don't want people just to be able to connect it to any computer and turn it on. So
I'd find it quite amusing to watch somebody try and struggle out the door with my 72 terabyte Lacey.
I mean, big. They are quite heavy, but if they come prepared with a sack barrow, it's for me, data security is it's a big part of my workflow, and I take it really, really seriously. And it always surprises me how little people do take it seriously. People don't tend to be flippant with it. People don't tend to think about it. And
don't take it into consideration.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you're doing, especially if you're doing kind of high value commercial work, you absolutely may need to make sure it's as secure as it possibly can be. It's I think it's very important, because also, without being funny, read the contracts you're signing. There will be probably part of the contract that is, if things happen, you're liable. And if you lose the data, it's on you. So don't
make sure you have the correct insurance.
Yeah, exactly. And don't lose the data, whatever you do. So for me, having encrypted drives, because people misplace hard drives and stuff all the time. It just happens. And I'll encrypt my client drives. I'll encrypt my client drive, and the client will have the password sent to them over email. So it also stops people who should be looking.
Yeah.
That for me is a very important bit, and that's built into the Mac OS. There are probably ways of doing it on Windows. I just have never used them, so I can't recommend any. But going back to the actual workflow, because sorry, I digressed again. The way I do it is when I get back into the office, I have one. So I use the 3-2-1 rule. So I have 3 copies of my data, 2 on site, 1 off site. That's the 3-2-1 rule, and that means the chances of failure or total loss are considerably reduced. If you have 1 copy on your data on a hard drive in the office and that fails, the data's gone. But if you have a backup of that hard drive in your office, if the one hard drive fails, you've still got the other hard drive, so it's not a problem. And then if you have 3 copies and both copies in the office get nicked, burned down in a fire, you've still got another copy off site. So you see what I mean? There's kind of there's very few scenarios where all 3 hard drives can either break, fail, or get nicked. And do hard drive swaps with people. You know, without being funny, like all photographers should have an offsite backup. We all know about it. Like if you've got a mate who lives down the road, just do a hard drive swap. Do it every week or two, you know, and literally just be like, there's your offsite. Oh, thanks, mate. There's your offsite. Bosh.
Yeah,
Peace of mind. We all have to store them somewhere. You know, mine are in secret locations, which makes me sound like super kind of man of mystery, but it's not that exciting.
They're buried in the woods.
Yeah, that's it. I've got the coordinates, so everything's fine. But yeah,
do you
go on.
What's your current system? I know that you've set up a new NAS system, right?
I do have a new NAS system, which I won't talk about brand name and stuff for security reasons, but it is a it's a really interesting system. So my main working drive is one of the big drives again. So I have a 72 terabyte main working drive, and I have it set to RAID 5. Now, quick before we start talking about RAIDs, I'm not going to go into RAID detail because RAID's important. Okay, and talking about RAID could very well be 3 episodes on its own. And don't worry, it won't be. We're not going to do that. But if you,
sounds really
doesn't it just? Oh, I think we should talk about parity and redundancy. We're not going to do that. Don't worry about it. But you should look into RAID. RAID is basically an array of disks that are set up in a way that if one or two fail, the unit can continue to operate. So if you quick thing here, and this is a fact. Hard drives are getting better, but it's not if a hard drive will fail, it's when a hard drive will fail. They are incredibly complex bits of kit. They will fail at some point in time. Don't muck about. You can't have, you know, if you're operating a 15-year-old iMac and you have never changed the hard drive, get the hard drive changed as a matter of urgency. You know, or you'll lose everything. Hard drives fail. That is simply a fact. You know, Backblaze every year, for example, release their hard drive system facts, and they use petabytes. I don't know what the one is above that, but they use petabytes of data, and they show how many hard drives have failed in a year, and they do percentages, and then you can kind of see which are the better hard drives. And it's if you like hard drives, it's fascinating reading. But hard drives fail. That is, you know, don't be cocky about it. Don't go, oh yeah, I've got my offsite on a 5-year-old hard drive. There are very few hard drives with a 5-year warranty. Get them changed. And also, are they a great cost in the grand scheme of things? Say, for example, you have everything on a 10 terabyte offsite drive. That's 250, 300 quid. Just update it every couple of years. All my hard drives get changed out after 3 years as like as a standard.
If you use, because so I run RAID 5 and then have offsite backups, which I store kind of at home in the home office. Not the home office is on Whitehall. My home office.
Yeah, Boris looks after them.
Yeah, give them to Bozo. No, so I use that, but I've lost my train of thought now. I've just got this vision of Boris Johnson in my hard drives. Weird. So, oh god, I've totally lost my train of thought.
You were saying you had RAID 5s and then you have offsites.
Yeah, but there was a point to it.
Well, I think quickly, while you remember that, I will just quickly jump in and say, if you have a RAID system, do not think of it as a backup. RAID is, and this is a common misconception that a lot of people have. RAID is not a backup. RAID is a safety provision. That's super important to understand. RAID, if the RAID goes down, it's still one copy of your data. Yes, it's spread across multiple disks, and yes, you then have the redundancy. You have the failure provision. If a hard drive goes down, if you're using a RAID 5 array, you can lose one drive. If you're using RAID 6, you can lose 2 drives. But
I've actually had it with my old Promise Pegasus system where I lost 2 drives. Within the space of a couple of days, because of where it used to sit, and because it was an older archive that I wasn't accessing regularly, it'd be very easy for you to get your little red light and not notice it, and then not do anything about it. And a couple of days later, another little red light pops up. As soon as you lose 2 of your drives on a RAID system, then you've lost your data. So,
well, if you're using RAID 6, you can still lose those 2 drives and it still be working. Yeah. But you need to.
RAID 5 is probably the most common that people
Yeah,
tend to
RAID
use.
5 is RAID 5 comes pre-configured on most of the large hard drives. It's because you the chances of you losing 2 hard drives in that space of time is really unfortunate. Like when you told me about it, I was like, that's terrible luck. That doesn't tend to happen. But what you should do is, if you do have a hard drive failure in your RAID array, you stop everything, you get a hard drive ordered as quickly as you can, and you get that RAID rebuilding.
And I always have a couple of spare. I use the was it Seawolf?
Seagate Ironwolf.
That's
Yeah,
the
I
one.
use those as
Seawolf,
I use
I
those as
think
well.
Seawolf would be a better
I use the pro versions because they come with a 5-year warranty.
Yeah, and I have a couple of those as like just empty, ready to go as backups in case you need to swap something out.
Sorry, I know we did say
so
we weren't going
what
to
do
talk
you
too
use?
much about
So
RAID.
to go
Whoops.
to go back, do you use a dock system for your offsite drives? Because my problem with offsite drives is I've not traditionally used it. I started using a particular type of hard drive, and then every year I've tried to buy a new hard drive that's the same in the same enclosure, the same size, in order that I've got some kind of system.
I see what you mean. So
and actually, it would be a lot better to just get the hard drive and then plug it in.
So that's what I do. So you're talking about trying to buy the same external USB drive, whereas I bypass that and I have a USB enclosure that has it's by StarTech, and it's just a 3.5-inch drive. You open the door, slot a drive in, close the door, and it pops up on your computer. And then I have them on my desk at the moment. I have these hard cases called Yotta Master, and they're just these plastic protection boxes that have got they've got a nice foam neoprene lining, so the drive's nice and protected. And then I have a selection of those in a Peli case that is then on the secret offsite location. And I also have a spare working year. So I know we've jumped the gun and gone straight to offsites, but quickly while I'm here, I might as well talk about it, because I know you and I, we do it in a similar way, but it's kind of different. So you use the external drives, which means you probably have to carry a power adapter and a USB cable with the drive.
Yeah, well, I keep one at home, keep one in the studio.
Right. So so with mine, it's a bit more lightweight because it's just the hard drive. So I can plug it in wherever I have a 3.5-inch hard drive reader, and so I connect it in, and then I have two. Say for example, I have two 2020 drives. So I have one in the office and I have one in the offsite, and this is separate from my on-site stuff. I have just a spare drive. So when I need to do my offsite backup, I do the backup using Chronosync. I have probably 30 different Chronosync documents that I use to do all my backing up. And then I quickly pop in the 2020 drive. I blitz a quick backup, and then I take the updated drive to my location where my offsites are. I swap it out for the other 2020 drive, and I bring that 2020 drive back with me. So it saves me a trip to go to my offsite. So I only need to do it once rather than take the drive, update it, and then take it back. I just swap the drives over, and it saves me a journey.
Yeah, it's quite almost like a relay system.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever found anywhere? I mean, this is one thing that always kind of annoys me with the amount of data that we create. Thank God we're not having to store negatives. My negatives I can store in boxes that I must. I don't know what percentage of my work would have been shot on film, but it's probably very, very minimal compared to the amount of data I create digitally now. But you still end up with all these hard drives that after a few years you swap out. Have you ever found anywhere good that you can actually recycle hard drives? Because I hate the idea that they just end up in an electronic landfill, because, well, we've both, I've worked on those rubbish dumps in Sierra Leone, and you've just shot a big project on rubbish dumps across Indonesia.
Yeah,
right?
No, absolutely.
Once you see that mountain of waste, and especially e-waste, it makes you think, I don't really want to be adding to this.
Yeah, do you know what? I actually do because all my drives are encrypted, and I use a certain way of doing it. I actually then do a military grade format on the hard drives, and then I sell them. So because they are actually still in very good condition, because they're only 3 years old. But for
Yeah.
me, when they're out of warranty, I might as well just replace them. So,
Yeah.
and they go off and they probably live for a few more years in someone else's machine. They probably go into a RAID array somewhere else and they're very happy for a few years. But for me, it's all
Yeah.
about mitigating risk. So there might be some less risk averse people more risk averse, no, less risk averse, who are very happy to buy a secondhand hard drive and go off and do it like that. But I use the
Yeah.
same the format that the US military use. So it's I feel very confident having kind of done that my drives are going to go off and get recycled.
Yeah.
With my offsite backup, it matters less because I can just, if one of those drives fails, if it's in warranty, I'll obviously claim. But if it's not out of warranty, it doesn't seem much a point because they're not really getting used that much. But for my main working drives in the office and my main on-site backup, the drives get replaced every 3 years and then just formatted properly, so it's impossible to find anything on it, and then sold. Okay. So that's how I do it, because you're right. We've seen chronic waste, and actually I now do everything in my power to not throw things away, not waste, and things like that.
Yeah. So shall we move on from the hard drives? Have you got anything more to add?
Well, we didn't really cover on site. But what happens for me? Sorry, when I come back from a shoot, I have everything on the SSD, and then I bring the session over onto my main working drive, which is then automatically set up with Chronosync. So Chronosync will run different years now at different time intervals. So say, for example, 2016, I don't access my 2016 folder very much. So I have Chronosync set to update that every week. So my computer will be running overnight and it will load 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and it will run that every month, for example. 2019, well, I might have edited some things from that. That's quite a recent thing. So that'll be running a week. And then 2020 will be running every day. So I am confident that when I copy things over to my my main working drive, I can either set the Chronosync session to go manually and I know it's going to be updated straight away, or I can just let it go overnight and I know it's done like that. I then have an email in the morning saying the backup's done, everything's fine. And it's good to keep an eye on these things because people can become a little bit complacent and have these things working in the background, but they might have stopped the service for some reason and you might not notice. Yeah. So that's why I do that.
But as we said earlier, I mean, this is the perfect time to be kind of shoring up these sides of your business practice.
Absolutely.
Because ultimately everyone's got a bit more spare time on their hands, and it's a great opportunity to be making sure your systems are like the most efficient in terms of how they're running.
Yeah, 100%. And it's going to get tough, guys. We're bluntly, and if you get known as a guy who lost a shoot, that's not going to be good. Not going to be good. So please, just for the sake of the reputation of photographers, take care of your data. Your images are your most important thing. Anyway, lecture over. Sorry.
So do you want to should we talk briefly then about productivity and kind of things that you have in place with that? I mean, we're in danger because this could be another separate podcast in itself.
I think bluntly we will do another podcast on it, but I think just to kind of whet your appetite for that podcast, we should talk about it. So do you want to talk about like the top two things that you have that kind of increase your productivity?
See, my systems are quite different to yours, and if I were to think off the top of my head of what I use from a productivity point of view, I have a system with Things 3, which is like a to-do list manager.
Yeah, let's quickly talk about to-do lists and calendars, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who to-do lists can become a bit archaic, can't they? So you might end up having a system on your desk which is sticky notes stuck to your screen, and that could be your to-do list, or you might have it written down or something like that.
Traditionally, I always used to like having to-do lists written down, and I would have them rather than on my phone. But the thing with having a digital system is obviously you can then have it on, have it on my studio computer, on my telephone, and on laptop and iPad and everything.
Yeah.
It just works across all platforms and it syncs across all platforms. Now, the thing with Things 3 is that you can use it to create multiple projects and areas. So you have your projects that sit within your areas. So I could have one for the studio, I could have one for business, I could have one for the work side of things, personal side of things, etc. And within that, I can nest other areas. Sure. So
now on most to-do lists, you can do a similar thing. It's not quite as nice as Things 3 because I've seen it. It looks cool, but you can.
But what you can also do is you can then set calendar dates, so you can have like deadlines. You can have something that you have your priority list, which is for today, and you can also use tags and hashtags, which allow you to kind of then filter and have vast amounts of stuff on there. Because my issue is I quite often will have a thought and we'll add it to the to-do list. And so then it just sits in this kind of never-ending list. So every so often I will go through and then start sorting stuff into like, right, that's a priority that needs to be done by the end of the month, and put a deadline in. Or it just gets moved across into the relevant folder, so that if, for example, I've got a day where I've not got much on and I want to say, right, well, I need to look into this, I can go into that section and see all of the things that are on that to-do list that need still to be actioned.
When you add a date, does that then add the to-do item to your calendar?
I'm sure it can do. I don't think I've got that set up.
So the way I have mine set up is I use Apple Reminders, which seems a bit basic, right? But there is an app called Good Task. And Good Task is what you always wanted reminders to be. I'm fairly certain actually that might be their tagline, pay me. So is that going to become my like thing now? It's just going to be like, pay me. I hope not. So Good Task is available from the App Store. It's just it's download. You have to pay for it. But I paid for it, and it is well worth the investment because it basically takes reminders from being a very basic to-do app to everything that Greg has just described. You can do in Good Task, and I'm sure you can do in Things 3 when you add. So, say for example, I want to add a note to my there's something I need to do on the website. So I need to create an email to my web guy, and he loves getting emails from me. But I will create a task and I will put hashtag web or hashtag website. I then have a smart list. I don't know, does Things 3 have smart lists? So on Good Task, it will create a smart list on the left-hand side, which is hashtag website. And so when I click on that, it will show me all of the to-do list items that are just marked as website. So I go, oh, cool. I only have one thing to email him about. I'll email him about that. Tick it off because I've done it. And then for me, smart lists and things like that is a really great way of doing it. And the way I have my calendar set up is that when I add a time-sensitive task, so, record podcast with Greg, hashtag podcast, it will then create, if I say 10 a.m. Tuesday or Monday, whatever day the day is today, it will then add that as a calendar item in my calendar with a checklist. So I can complete it from Good Task or complete it from my calendar app. So it's nice that when I open my calendar up, I can see exactly what's time sensitive in the week. So I don't even need to go to Good Tasks to see what I need to do today because it's already in my calendar as well. And I'm sure Things 3 has something. It's called a global shortcut. Does Things 3 have this? So you know how you can bring up on Mac, if you hit Command and Spacebar, it brings up your Spotlight search. Wherever you are in the system, it'll bring the search to the foreground. It's great. I have it set up. There's a global shortcut you can set up in Good Task. So I have mine as the Option key to the left of the Command key, Option Spacebar, and then that will launch the global shortcut for Good Task. So I can add a task wherever I am in my operating system. So I might be in Photoshop, I might be in Capture One, but I can open up the Good Task thing and the global shortcut, and then just add from wherever I am. And it's got.
And you set up those global shortcuts just via your system preferences.
It's in the preferences for Good Task. So for me, it's I think you go, where is it? Yeah, there's so many preferences. It's a quite a nerdy bit of software.
Yeah, so Things has a similar thing actually.
Yeah. It's honestly, it's fantastic. It's a really, really, when you're used to using it, it speeds everything up a lot because you don't have to go down to the dock. You don't have to find a bit of software. You don't have to find the plus note or control N or whatnot. You can just add a to-do list from anywhere. And it's got smart entry. I don't know what they call it, but it's kind of like, I'm sure Things 3 has it. If you type in Greg podcast 10 a.m. Monday, it will type in the to-do name as Greg podcast, and then it will set the date automatically and set the time automatically as well. And that saves you tons of time going through. And most of the current to-do list bits of software, Things 3 is notoriously one of the best. There was Wunderlist, which has been bought out by Microsoft and turned into Microsoft To Do, but there's a few of them. But I know Things 3 is meant to be one of the best. So
and you love your shortcuts in general.
Oh,
so
man,
I mean,
do I
talk, because you mentioned the other day Apple shortcuts, which I wasn't even aware was kind of on my phone.
Yeah, no one knows.
But you use that.
Yeah, they launched it and basically didn't tell anyone. It's like, guys, we're going to put this thing on your phone, but shh, don't know about it. Don't use it. It's like when
it's like the YouTube
album. Exactly.
Yeah,
you can get rid of this one if you don't want it. With the Apple shortcuts, it's effectively creating macros for your phone. So if you, for example, need to send images of receipts to your accountant, and you are currently opening the camera, taking a picture, opening mail, composing a new email, attaching that image, putting in a subject line in, and then sending it, you can automate that entire process using a shortcut in Apple Shortcuts. And then what happens is you swipe right when you're on your home screen. It brings up your, whatever it's called, notification. Is it notification center? Where you have all the batteries for your phone and you have all the shortcuts for the apps. And then you can literally just hit receipts. Say, for example, you've created this thing, this action in Apple Shortcuts. It will launch the camera. You take the picture you want to take and click use photo. It will then take that photograph, attach it to an email, fill in who it's going to. So all you need to do is hit send and choose the resolution of the image you want to send to your accountant or anyone, and it will automatically send it and do it. It's gone. So
whilst we're on that, I mean, that's basically what I use Receipt Bank.
Right.
And that's effectively what that does. Yep. But you pay for that as a service for a subscription, and obviously this is it's just a quick free way of doing that.
Yeah, I do love finding workarounds and stuff, but it's quite simple. Receipt Bank is cool. It's a very cool bit of OCR software that will analyze your receipts and create text readable receipts from the images.
And it also fills stuff which then feeds into my accounting software, which is quite
exactly. Well, I don't have accounting software. My accountant does everything. So I just send everything off to them, and then they come back to me each month going, that's how much you've earned. And I go, during lockdown.
I think we'd love to. That's another thing, actually, in the future we might look at getting on is somebody. I mean, it sounds riveting, but actually it could be really interesting and really useful for a lot of photographers, is to do a episode on accounting.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So for you listeners who don't know, I'm a fully qualified graduate of accounting. I've got an accounting degree. No, that's not true. I've got an economics degree. Anyway, but one of my modules in my degree was talking about small business, why small businesses fail, and how small businesses can avoid failing. And one of the main reasons small businesses fail is cash flow. If you can stay on top of your accounting, it will be a huge help. And it's a good accountant, much as though it does seem like the driest thing, there are only two things that are certain in life, right? Death and taxes. You need to pay your taxes, and you will probably die at some point.
Probably.
Well, sorry, I know we're heading towards the end, so keep it light. So you have to pay your taxes, guys, and don't worry, you're going to die. But it's sorry, I don't know where I've gone with that. But there are two things that are certain in life: death and taxes. And a good accountant will save you more than they cost.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so because people might go, I don't want to pay an accountant; they're expensive, but they will save you. You know, they claim for things that you don't even know you can claim for. So,
Yeah.
you know, they're
Yeah, we'll definitely try and do an episode on that. And I think again, similar to to what we said earlier, I think if anyone's kind of got any burning questions on that front,
Mhm.
then it would be useful to get them in so that we've got something to put to the to our guest.
Yeah, DM us on Instagram, or you can drop us an email at info@exposenegative.com with any suggestions and stuff. But I think we're starting to kind of run onto like a bit of a long episode.
Mm-hmm.
I also think
Because I think we should do another. I think we're going to have to come back and do another one because we haven't even touched on Stream Deck and Keyboard Maestro.
you wait. We haven't even talked about Text Expander, even though I've mentioned it many times in the past. We've got lots of workarounds and lots of bits of software that save time. The thing is, we have very little time. That's not true. We currently have got some time, but we all know we're hoping to get busy again, and we will. It will happen at some point. When we do get busy, you want to make your back office kind of organization, the productivity, all of these things, they can be either really complex and take you loads of time, or you can spend the time to make them as simple as possible, and it will save you a lot of time and hassle and stress. So, you know, there are going to be things that hopefully help. And hopefully this podcast has been interesting. I know we've rambled a bit about hard drives. It's not quite what we'd planned, but you know, it turns out there's a huge amount of things that we can talk about productivity. So we're going to talk in future G&T episodes. We are going to talk about, you know, apps that you can use to save time, apps that you can use to help plan shoots. You know, we're going to talk about editing workflow. We're going to be talking about, you know, how you pack your bags, how you pack your lighting, how you choose your lighting. We're going to talk about all these things because all of these things come under the productivity banner, if you will. So anything you want to know about, just send it in and we'll add it to the, you know, the docs that we have, and we will we'll do our best to cover it.
Excellent.
Was it?
Well,
I don't know. I hope so.
Yeah, let us know. We'll be back to normal service with a guest next week.
Yes, we will. And we've got some super interesting ones coming up. So
We do.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy, and yeah, catch you then.
Well, thanks so much for tuning in this week. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you'd like to know more about today's guest and read the show notes, head along to www.exposenegative.com. And you can find us on Instagram at exnegative. See you next week.